Yeah, exactly. So once you accept that it's true, you'll see that it's true. That was exactly my point. Daniel said that once you accept the Quran, you'll understand that the Quran is the superior revelation and that it's the thing by which we judge the past revelation. Now, Daniel said there's other independent arguments. I'm not concerned. I didn't answer or reply to what you called independent arguments other than to say that those were fallacies to just cite consensus of fallacy of consensus. I specifically addressed the specific claim that you said that a 7th century Christian or Jew could go to their text to see what? The Muslim reading of those texts. That is what you said. You said that Muhammad is like Moses, that there's some similarities and that the Old Testament has contradictions. Those are arguments based on the presupposition that the Quran is true. That's the thing that's in question. That's why I keep asking you for an epistemic principle that isn't ad hoc, arbitrary, or circular, because every argument that you present is just a restatement of the Quranic position. And that's why you have to say, well, once you accept that it's true, you'll see that it's true. You see, that's a circle. So again, all this shows is just inconsistency, and that the prior revelation has to be cited and given some credence because they know that they want to have continuity. And that's what this debate is ultimately about. But then when other things are brought in from prior revelation that are even assumed and mentioned in the Quran, like these manifold examples of large narratives, the response is that those are the ones that we don't like and we don't accept those because they're problematic for our position. And then he just cited unbelieving scholars and so forth, as if citing a consensus has anything to do with a debate. It doesn't matter. When I cited the Jews as scholars, that was just attestation to prove that it's not monolithic. It wasn't a proof. But Daniel seems to think that citing somebody makes it a proof, which is, again, a fallacy. So all of this just shows, again, inconsistency in his presentation.
And time. We'll kick it over to Daniel.
So again, you keep asserting that it's circularity. There's no circularity. The Jew and the Christian in the 7th century or today, they see similarities between Moses and Muhammad ﷺ with their eyes. They look at empirical data. They look at the historical record. These are people who are not assuming that the Quran is true. Then on the basis of those similarities, basis on an empirical observation, using their reason, using their intuitions, then they come to accept that Muhammad ﷺ is a true prophet. This is not circular. So yeah, and referring to academic consensus, again, I'm not just saying, oh, the academic consensus is what it is, and I don't know what they're actually saying. The academic consensus is based on data. It's based on radiocarbon dating. It's based on paleographic data. It's based on inscriptions. It's based on all of this data that then the academics reach this consensus about the Quran, as opposed to the Bible. So that this is not circular. It's not a fallacy. Citing research is not fallacious. Unless you have a problem with the research, you can bring up those problems. I'm happy to hear your critique of the historical critical method. That's fine. But I mean, I want to ask you, what percentage of scholars at research universities and Ivy League schools, Jay, agree that the Old Testament and the New Testament have been accurately transmitted and are free from polytheism? Can you answer that question? Like, what is the percentage really of these Ivy League schools that consider the Old Testament and the New Testament to be accurately transmitted from the time of the prophets or the time of Jesus? And how many of them will say that the Old Testament is free from polytheism?
Time. Floor is yours, Jay.
Maybe if I draw a circle for you, it'll help, because I can make it really easy. Because what you just said in your comment there, you said, what's the epistemic principle? They'll go look at their text and find similarities. Similarities to what? To the Quran's presentation of who Muhammad is. That's a circle, Daniel. Yeah, you're laughing because I guess you just realized there's a circle behind you on the wall. Maybe that helps you understand how a circle goes. It goes from asking the question of epistemic principle. You said a similarity in their text to the Quran. So in other words, reading their texts according to the presupposition of the superiority of the Quran, when the Quran is the thing that's in question. That's a circle, Daniel. Now, in regard to, again, the consensus of percentage of scholars, what would that have to do with anything being true or false? You could have 99.9% of scholars saying any number of things. What would that have to do with whether it's true or false? Now, maybe it's true, but you understand that this is a fallacy again. Now, if we surveyed what, evangelical scholars? Well, most of them are going to believe in the reliability of the text. But your survey would presumably not have those people. Also, by the way, in your Hashmi debate, you said, for example, that about 37 minutes in, the historical critical method is perfect for deconstructing Judaism and Christianity. But what about the other one? Oh, your position. Yeah, Islam. So are you really going to tell me that modern critical scholarship unanimously accepts the Quran as an authentic historic document? You know that's not true. That's ridiculous. No, they don't. You're over there bobbing your head. Unbelieving scholars don't present that. Now, you could rely on some fallacies like, well, it has some things that it presents, like Unitarianism. Well, so what? A lot of religions present Unitarianism. That doesn't prove or disprove anything. So you're just deflecting into topics to get away from the epistemic principle, which you just showed as a circle.
And time,
Can you
Daniel?
explain to me how it's not a circle?
Yeah, if I say something like, okay, yeah, just hold it up, Jay. Okay, so if I say that Jay is living in a 5-story house, okay, I make that claim, and then I go and I explore. Someone goes and explores Jay's house and says, "Oh, yep, that's a 5-story house." Is that a circular type of reasoning? He's just confirmed it with his eyes. A claim that is made in the Quran is then confirmed by people who are observing the world. Where is the circle? Like when you have a circle, just drawing arrows on a whiteboard doesn't make it a circle, Jay. And about the academic consensus, yes, it is a consensus. Yes, that's the point that I keep trying to make to you. The academic consensus is that the Quran has been preserved. They've radiocarbon dated the Quran to within the lifetime of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. And the academic consensus is that there is one author of this Quran. It's not dozens or hundreds of different authors and editors. That was a theory. That was a theory about the Quran, but it was refuted. It was debunked. How? Because the academic researchers found evidence. They found all kinds of records. They did the radiocarbon data. They did research, empirical research, and they came to that consensus. That's not a circle, Jay. So you mentioned my debate on the historical critical method. If you listen to the full debate, I said, yeah, Muslims can endorse the historical critical method, and we can apply it to the Quran. The thing is that when we do apply the historical critical method to the Quran, it comes out on top. That's why, as a Muslim, I want to endorse that methodology. I do want to endorse it, but you as a Christian cannot. You have to say that, oh, you can't appeal to consensus because, oh, that's a fallacy or that's a circle or some way to wave away the academic consensus. So go to the Quran, A Historical Critical Introduction by Nikolai Sinai. Go read that book and it'll explain that there's a consensus on the preservation of the Quran.
Time. We'll kick it over to Jay.
Yeah, so again, maybe Daniel's not familiar with informal fallacies, but the appeal to consensus is a fallacy. Now, you might bring in the appeal to consensus to back up a claim or to demonstrate that there's evidences for a claim. It's not a proof. And so it really has nothing to do with the thing that we're debating today, because the debate is not about whether or not the Quran was written by one person. I could concede that it was, and I don't really have any opinion either way. That doesn't mean that it's true or that it has anything to do with being consistent with the religion of the prophets. So total irrelevance to the topic of the debate. And I'd like to go back to what you said as your answer to explain this with, you just see it with your eyes. Really? You think that's how epistemology works? Because I gave you your exact statements about the epistemic principle for how we know the continuity exists. And you said that the 7th century Judeo-Christian looks to see the similarities to what? To the Quran. And you just see it with your eyes. That's called circularity. And I'm surprised that you can't see this, because this is just assuming that the thing that is in question is the case, that the Quran is correct and that the Quran has continuity with prior revelation. And so you're just basically restating again that a 7th century Jew or Christian just simply goes to see in the books of Moses or in whatever, the Gospels, the principles of the Quran already there. And anything else that's not consistent with the principle of the Quran, you arbitrarily toss away. And so that's why I keep asking you for the epistemic principle that isn't circular based on the presuppositions of the Quran's theology that lets them verify it. So you've already admitted that they go to their texts, but you said their texts are full of contradictions. On the basis of what? On the basis of what the Quran presents. But the Quran's presentation is what's in question. So you understand the burden of proof is on you with the new revelation to make it consistent with the prior revelation. That's the prior test in Deuteronomy 13 and 18. So you just keep restating again the position of the Quran. So I'm going to ask you again, how is you just see it a resolution to the problem of circularity?
And time, 2 minutes for Daniel.
No, just like if the Bible makes a claim about something, like there are unicorns, we go to the world and we see if that's the case or not. And then we determine if the Bible is correct or not. Same with the Quran. If the Quran made a claim that, Moses was a prophet who had wings and he could fly or something like that, and we don't have any historical record of that, or the Jews or Christians say, like, we don't have any concept of that, then that would be evidence for them to say that, okay, well, this is not adding up, so we don't accept the Quran. But what has happened with a lot of Jews and Christians over history is that they see that the Quran is making claims that then they, as unbelievers, go and look not only in scripture, they look to themselves, they look at their lives, they look at ayat, the signs of Allah, and then based on all of that evidence together, then they come to the conclusion that this is true or this is false. That's not circular reasoning. So the claim that, and this is why I presented in the opening statement, like these are all the similarities between Muhammad ﷺ and Moses. These are things they can be confirmed or they can be denied. And you see a lot of parallels that confirm that similarity, and that becomes a non-circular reason to accept the Quran and the claims of the Quran.
We'll give it to you, Jay. 2 minutes.
Oh, wait. Don't I have 30 seconds?
If you still wanted that last.
Yeah,
yes.
I still want the rest of it. So 7th century Christian can notice contradictions in the Bible without relying on the Quran. 7th century Christian can notice that doctrine changes over time without relying on the Quran. 7th century Christian can notice that the Trinitarian concept is illogical and polytheistic without relying on the Quran. So there's nothing circular about any of those conclusions. And again, referring to academic consensus is not circular. It's not, I can't believe that you take references to academia as circular.
I didn't say it was circular, so it's a fallacy. It's called the fallacy of consensus or the fallacy of
We'll kick it over to Jay for the start of his 2 minutes.
So I would like to point out that Daniel just said that appealing to the consensus is not a fallacy. So I would, again, maybe you should brush up on basic fallacies. Appeal to consensus and appeal to authority is a fallacy. So I think, again, we're seeing some embarrassment here on the basics. But let's go back to this again, because when he restated himself about this question, he just restated again that, well, you just go and look with your eyes to see what? The question is about epistemic principle, not empirical data. So he's just restating a basic naive empiricist position. That's not going to solve the epistemic principle about how he knows, or how a 7th century Jew or Christian knows, that the Quran is the true way to read the Old Testament. That's the thing that he's doing. But I'm saying, well, if I want to verify that the Quran is the new revelation that I'm supposed to follow, he said, go to Moses and you'll see what? Oh, contradictions. Contradictions on the basis of what? The teaching of the Quran. Well, then he said, no, actually, there's other historical things that I could point to, like the Trinity being illogical. Oh, you mean like how I could ask you the exact same problem of a dependence relationship between the attributes of Allah? How I could ask you the exact same problem of how Allah has two right hands and how he descends from the throne to the lower heavens, but he doesn't enter into creation. And those things are all metaphorical. There's a dependence relationship between the attributes. Oh, but also it's maybe something we just read literally and we don't go into the speculations because Daniel's a Salafi. Maybe he doesn't want to go into metaphysics. Oh, no, he doesn't allow any of that for his stuff. He doesn't want you to know that, the unity of Allah, which everybody's supposed to just appeal to and know as, this is so clear, everybody believes this. Well, there's actually 6 different schools debating for centuries what the unity of Allah actually means. So he knows that it's not a simple, obvious thing. The dependence relationship between the attributes shows that his position is not immune to the very one and many problem that he's trying to throw on the Trinity. And again, the prior revelation of Moses in the Torah is full of texts that have references to
And time.
multiplicity.